Welcome back to Greek class, and we're carrying on with E13 Lesson 13, and it is an action-packed lesson. Lots of stuff going on here. We're dealing with the second aorist, that is irregular aorist, irregular verb forms. So English has a regular verb form, learn, learned, learned, and it has irregular verbs like eat, ate, eaten, or go, went, gone. So likewise, in Greek, we have verbs that are irregular. And so we have a verb like, let's see, erkomai means I go or I come. And then when we get to the third principal part, its third principal part is eilthon. You would not have seen that coming. And the strong aorist or second aorist in Greek take a different set of endings than the regular verb. So our regular verb, again, you'll recall, was elisa. So that's our aorist for a regular verb, I loosed. But here, for an irregular verb, it's eilthon, I went. So how is that? How is it built? Building the second aorist in the active and middle voices. You're going to take the augment. So there's still an augment like there was in elisa. Here that augment is hidden in the epsilon, so the stem is elth. Since the stem starts with an epsilon, when you add an epsilon augment, you get eta. So we'll take the augment plus the irregular stem plus the imperfect endings. So we get eilthon, eilthus, eilthen, eilthamen, eilthata, eilthon. And the infinitive eilthane, to have loosed. Excuse me, to have gone. To have gone. Erkomai means I go or I come. Let's get all this on one page. And then in the middle voice, likewise, it's the middle endings for the imperfect. Amen, u, eta, amatha, esta, anta. And the infinitive eilthesthai. So, there's no new forms, as it were. I mean, you know these endings already, but you need to make a card, I think probably, that has this information on here. How do you form the second aorist? That it's augment plus the irregular stem plus the imperfect ending. How am I going to know the irregular stem? Well, how do you know the irregular stem for go, went, and gone, right? Somebody had to tell you. So now when we begin to learn verbs with these irregular stems, we'll learn them as we learn the verbs. And in fact, when we learn new verbs, we'll begin learning any irregular principal parts they have and begin to assemble those as we learn the vocabulary. But there's no new grammatical nuance here. We learned aorist in the last lesson, so nothing new to know there. How do you form the subjunctive? So let me see what page this is on in effort. He has the subjunctive on page 64 and 65. Forming the subjunctive off of this, you take the stem with no augment, of course, because we've left the indicative, so we don't have any more augment like we talked about in the last lesson. And then we add the subjunctive endings you've already learned. So eltho, elthes, 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 elte, etc. Elthomai, elte, etc. So nothing confusing, as it were, nothing new as far as endings, but just a new way to put them together on an irregular stem. So again, you need to make those charts for yourself to study off of on page 64 and 65. And then we get another little verb form to learn, the aorist indicative active of the verb to be. So I've placed that here. Again, this is on page 65. Amen, in other words, is I was. Ace, you were. You notice there are alternative forms for many of these. And then a new grammatical topic, second-class conditionals. These are unfulfilled conditionals. Unfulfilled. So the action is unfulfilled. And how are they formed? This always throws English speakers because this is not how we use the imperfect tense. So no, pay attention to this. If you've had French or Spanish, you're used to this kind of thing. But the present second-class conditional, on the if side, on the protasis, it takes a, if, plus a verb in the imperfect indicative. So here we're dealing with present time, but we're using the imperfect tense. And then likewise in the apodosis, it will use the imperfect. So here's our example. E eloan tous prophetas en san agathoi douloi. If they were loosing the prophets, and they're not, then they would be good slaves. If they were loosing the prophets, and they're not, then they would be good slaves. And that's the subjunctive English. If I were a rich man. And then in the past, it uses the aorist. A plus the aorist in the protasis, on plus the aorist indicative in the apodosis. So we have e elusan tous prophetas an eduloisan to kario. If they had loosed the prophets and they didn't, is understood, they would have served the Lord. Okay. So again, you need to make a chart that looks very much like this. How to form these second-class conditionals. How to form them in the present, how to form them in the past. That's always a good quiz question. Just give you a sentence and see if you can identify which class conditional it is. And then lastly, on page 67, you need to take the time to note all those irregular aorists, all those second aorists, and that's your vocabulary for the week, just learning where these aorists come from. And note, remember that all of them have an epsilon augment. Oh, and here's an interesting thing to note in the vocabulary. Well, here's one interesting thing to note. So you form the aorist. Here's balo. Excuse me. So balo in the present. This is balo in the aorist. I threw. This is balo in the imperfect. I was throwing. The only difference is the imperfect has the two lambda from the present tense, whereas the aorist its aorist, second aorist stem is beta alpha lambda with only one. So that's one interesting thing to note. Another one is we have the verb apathnesko, and let's see here. Oops. Apathnesko. Its stem, look what it does. You want to expect that augment to be on the very front, but the augment goes apathenon. There's its aorist. So apathnesko, I die. Apathenon, I died. And why does the epsilon go there? Because this is apa. It's a preposition added on to another word, nesko. So the as we learned before, remember that epsilon goes between an attached preposition in the main form of the verb. So that covers what there is to learn here in chapter 13, but obviously it is quite a lot. So you need to spend the time this week and really learn these forms. Take a solid 2 days to learn these, learn the vocabulary, which are these irregular third principal parts, these irregular aorists for these verbs that we know already. Spend a lot of time with them and read over the chapter, especially Efford's explanation of the conditionals. Really digest all that before you move on to the translations in the next video.